Okay, great. So I think it's time we can dive right into our class today.
Okay, so for some of you folks who have just joined us, if you have any questions related to class number one, feel free to chat it in as well as put in the Q&A box in Zoom, as well as if you have any questions related to class number two today, then feel free to chat us in as well. We want to make sure we carve out enough time to answer any questions that you have. So welcome to class number two, how to create a fundraising plan for 2020. I am Rob Wu, the CEO and founder of Cosvox.
And I'm Candace, the manager of success and education here at Cosvox.
And we're super excited to be your speakers for today, once again, for this fundraising plan course. Now, what Cosvox is we are a digital fundraising platform that helps you raise more with less effort. You know, typical fundraising tools are clunky, they're contract bound, they're hard to use, and they really prevent you from achieving your fundraising goals for 2020. So what we do at Cosvox is we help you run this more seamlessly. You can use us for donation pages, for recurring gift campaigns, for crowdfunding, as well as for peer-to-peer fundraising, as well as for events. You can use us for all of your digital fundraising. So that's something that we do here and really love to do. We serve thousands of customers, but we also love to educate too. So that's why we're here today with our fundraising course. Class one happened last week on Thursday. It was a really meaty session with tons of info. So I'm hoping that all of you received the summary email as well as did a little bit of homework too related to the fundraising plan. Today, we're gonna talk about crafting the plan. So last time we talked about the groundwork and some of the information you need to gather. Now we're talking about putting those things together. After this, class number two, then we'll have a third session. The third session is where you get to take what you've created and actually talk to somebody in real life about, Candace over here, in real life about how to tweak this fundraising plan as well as how to complete it. So you'll get an email, again, this is why this is important. So you'll get an email with not only the video and the summary, but also an ability to schedule a time for a one-on-one coaching session for your fundraising plan. So look out for that in the next day or two. All right. So in terms of this fundraising course, in addition to these three different sessions today included, we sent you the slides and video to class number one already. Again, if you did not receive this, let us know immediately so we can send it to you. And you'll get the slides and recordings to class number two in the next day or so. With that, you'll get the consultation with this fundraising plan course, which is to be scheduled on a one-on-one basis. You'll receive a fundraising plan and resource guide as well. This is a PDF with a walkthrough of how you can create a fundraising plan. And then also you'll get a spreadsheet too. You should have already looked at the spreadsheet from class number one, but it's our worksheet and template that you can fill out in order to create your fundraising plan. Great. Well, those are some of the major logistics items for this. Let's just kind of dive into class number two of how to create a fundraising plan, since I know that time is short. So crafting your plan. So we're going to talk about today some really meaty items that translate the foundational work that you did into actionable plans for 2020. So the first step is we'll walk through how you can create your fundraising resources list. Because a lot of times when you want to achieve a goal, it's really hard unless you figure out who you have that you can tap into, as well as what kind of budget you have and what kind of other resources you have. So we'll get a lay of the land, take inventory of your resources. Next, what we'll do is we'll finalize your 2020 fundraising strategies. Last time we talked a lot about digital fundraising and the opportunities over there. Well, this time we actually have some tactical fundraising ideas, not only a giant list that you can cherry pick from, but some of the ones that we think perform really well from an ROI perspective. And very lastly, we'll help you put everything together so you can craft an actionable fundraising plan for 2020. All right. So back in the day, 100 years ago when I was in college, I took a management class, and my professor always told me that prior planning prevents poor performance, which is a horrible thing to tell a college student who didn't care. Well, today I do care. And today, why that matters is because if you don't have a plan, then if you don't know where you're going, then you can end up somewhere else. So what we don't want to have happen for each one of you is that December 2020 rolls around and you look back on the past 11 months and not really sure what happened in terms of fundraising. So today we're hoping that through these two courses and one-on-one session, we're going to help you set off on a right track so you can meet and beat your 2020 fundraising goals. The deliverables that you'll get, which are similar to what we had from last time. One is a fundraising calendar, two is a spreadsheet, and then three is a coaching session. So one thing I did want to touch on, and just to reiterate this from a fundraising perspective, is this idea around the digital fundraising cycle. So the plan that you create is a living document. It's not something that you create and have it sit on your desk or create and put it up on a shelf. What's really important is to treat this like a process. So with this too, as you go through the fundraising cycles for 2020, think about three major steps of the fundraising process. So especially when it comes to digital and being successful online, the first step is this attraction phase. You want to attract as many people as possible so you can build your audience. Once you have a lot of people that hear about you, let's say 1,000 folks, then out of those 1,000 folks, you can nurture them, which is your step two of your process. Nurture them by telling them stories, by sharing with them the amazing work that you do and the problem that you're trying to solve. After you prime the pump, after you get people excited about nurturing them, then a certain number of those 1,000 folks are going to convert into donors. So that's your last step, which is to give them a call to action to follow. A lot of times when folks are putting together fundraising plans, they don't think about these three steps that are distinctly needed in order to get to the last step, which is that conversion point. Oftentimes we just jump to the conversion thinking that we can convert just 50 people to become donors out of 50, which is not true. It's not realistic. So think about attraction, think about nurturing before the conversion. All right. Now your templates that we're going to use today for this class, one is the fundraising calendar. So Candace will put up a link into the chat if it hasn't happened already. So feel free to click on that. It's a Google Sheet that you can follow with instructions, and we'll go into more detail today, as well as you can make a copy of that and have your own version. So be sure to open that up as we're talking through this. The second thing is your SMART goals. So these are goals that are realistic, that you can achieve. And we've broken it up into a couple of different buckets of general fundraising: acquisition, retention, and engagement. So we'll be going over these templates and using this as a tool to build out your fundraising plan. So your action item right now is to click on that link, download the fundraising plan calendar, or to open up the version that you have been using so we can continue filling that out with you.
So I'm pasting that in there now, and you can navigate there and just go to File and download these spreadsheets. Okay, so when you have those downloaded, hopefully you downloaded them last week and already got a head start on planning your SMART fundraising goals. A lot of that is going to feed into a lot of what we do today with assessing your resources. Another thing that's going to help is using that fundraising calendar template to assess last year's fundraising as well. So you know where you came from, so then you can know where you're headed next. And use those insights to optimize your fundraising for 2020. So when we're assessing your resources, you're going to want to look at the big picture so that you can really get a good handle on what it is that you're actually able to accomplish. So in 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, nonprofits' number one challenge for digital advancement was actually staff shortage. So this is a pretty common problem and has been for quite a while. So even though you may want to accomplish all these goals, all these good things that you have planned, um, you know, encountering staff shortage is probably going to be something that you may struggle with as well. So it's important to take these things into account when you're assessing your resources. Another thing is in 2019, budget constraints was the number one challenge for nonprofits preventing digital advancement. So it actually changed from staff shortage to budget constraints being number one in what nonprofits were experiencing the most difficulty with in accomplishing their fundraising plans. So these are likely going to be two things that you want to take a closer look at as you're assessing what you can actually accomplish this year. And another insight that I found really interesting was that nearly 31%, so about a third of organizations, describe their organization structure as poor under average. And so what this actually was like looking at was how you make decisions and how you plan and assess your previous resources, so reporting and all of that. So it's likely that you may struggle with this at your organization as well. So you might be fighting, your board on certain things or working with management to accomplish things. And these are things that may end up coming into play. So hopefully what we have here today is going to help you manage all of that so you can foresee those obstacles and find solutions for them. So really the main thing that we're looking at today is going through your fundraising plan to make sure that it's actionable, but also is feasible. So it has to be feasible and realistic about what you're able to accomplish in order for it to be actionable and make it work for your organization. So the first thing that you want to do to really accomplish this is listing out all of your fundraising resources. So when you think about fundraising resources, you're really thinking about three different things. So who is it that is able to help you carry out your fundraising plans? So of course, this includes staff, but maybe thinking about board members, volunteers, maybe even partners that can help you carry out your fundraising plans. So then you know who is available to help and who you can call on. Also estimating how many hours they actually have to dedicate to this. So that's something we'll be doing, is taking a look at how many hours it actually takes to accomplish each one of these tasks that you're looking to do, and kind of matching that up. So you make sure that your fundraising plans and the hours that you have available are one and the same. And then we're also looking at your overall fundraising and marketing budget. So first off is making a list of the people. So this is just really simple. It's basically just listing out any staff members. So I would consider both fundraising and marketing staff. I know sometimes these things are considered different, but I think it's really important, especially when you're looking at digital fundraising, to break down those silos and work together to accomplish a lot of your fundraising plan, because attract, nurture, convert, it all plays off of each other. And so that's where fundraising and marketing really can work together super well. So also number of volunteers, number of board members that are actually active and would probably assist you. And the number of partners you have developed over the years. So whether that's local businesses, maybe it's larger corporations, or just any other nonprofits that you regularly work with. So counting those into to consider how they can fit into your fundraising plan. Next is, so once you have all of those people considered, you'll want to take a look at the hours. So, maybe your marketing staff won't have as many hours to dedicate to some of your fundraising plan. So just kind of considering what each person's availability is, and having a rough estimate and then putting that into the sheet so that you have an idea of how you can actually accomplish each of your fundraising initiatives throughout the year, and what that real actual timeline might look like. Because I think a lot of the times projects get pushed off or held up because we don't consider the number of hours that it's really going to take to accomplish that. So do your best to estimate it. It's going to help you a lot to stay on track with your fundraising plan. So really this is going to look like something like this. It doesn't have to be exactly in this format, but I just think it's a good example of just a really simple look at the staff and hours that you're looking at when you're assessing your resources. So as an action item, you're just going to want to make that list for yourself and then list out the number of hours a week that you believe are available for fundraising.
Yeah, and this is really important because when it comes to digital fundraising, typically staff hours is the biggest resource. You're not limited really by dollars. Typically, it's more about you're limited by time. Like every organization is limited by time. So figuring out realistic hours that your team has will give you a better insight into how to prioritize fundraising initiatives, as well as what is actually realistic from an execution standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, as another problem facing a lot of organizations have had a lot of budget constraints. So 2019, that was the #1 challenge. So I think this is really important when you're looking at how to actually do your fundraising in 2020, is detailing out your budget for fundraising. So a lot of this looks like, you know, for our purposes today, we're going to set aside the things that are already concrete. So you probably have some tools that you're already using and are already paid for. You know, we're not counting in a lot of what is already set up in your fundraising spend. But for today's purposes, I would suggest that you think through what you need in order to accomplish your goals this year. Maybe you've outgrown your donor management system and need a higher functioning CRM. You might want to take a look at your fundraising platforms that you're using, if you are using any. You know, consider transaction fees and what all of this really adds up to calculate your fundraising spend. So even if you want to do a new event, consider what additional costs are going to come about with that. Similarly, you want to consider your marketing spend. So while, you know, again, there's some silos typically with this, but I think it's really important to factor in because when you're doing a digital fundraising campaign, for example, you might run digital ads. You are probably going to use an email newsletter service. What are the fees involved with that? If you're doing a mailing, what does it take to print, or even factoring in stamp costs? So just to get a sense of what you need in order to grow your fundraising in 2020, you want to add these up. So you have an estimate of the total spend. So this is not hard and fast, exactly what you're going to be spending in 2020. That will definitely come about as you go. But I would recommend overestimating a little bit just so that you can get that budget approved and have that to work with throughout the year. So, so yeah, that's really essential to planning out your 2020, is really considering what else you need in your budget in order to perform well. And then something else that I do want to bring up is considering what software you have available to you. So I think this is a really key part of your fundraising resources, because it's likely that you are using fundraising software already. Maybe there's a few of you that are using CauseVox. But really going into them and considering what are you underutilizing. There may be a fundraising platform, for example, that you're not really spending a lot of time in. what else can you do with that piece of software that you're already using and paying for, and how can you use that to grow your fundraising? Analytics as well. Maybe you're using Google Analytics and haven't really taken a good look at that in a while. That might be something you want to circle back on. Similarly, you want to think about what you may have grown out of. So sometimes a donor management system works for an organization for a while, but you're coming to find out now that it's out of date and might not integrate with everything that you want it to. And so for you to also grow your fundraising really well in 2020, you might need to switch. So, consider what changes in your software you might be looking at in 2020 is going to be really essential, because I think one of the things with software that goes overlooked is that a change in software can actually save you a lot of time, especially with reconciling donor data, or just even like streamlining your marketing. So those staff hours that we just talked about that are so important, those staff hours could actually be saved by making an improvement to your software. And then you have more time to actually feed back into your fundraising plan.
Yep. Yeah, definitely software is something to take a look at, because you don't want to be paying for something that you're not using, eating a valuable budget, as we just talked about, or underutilizing something you're paying for and not getting the full ROI. And a lot of times at organizations, we tend to throw people at solving a problem versus thinking about what kind of technology and what kind of processes we can have in order to automate and solve the fundraising problem. So take a look at the software. Technology is wonderful, especially when it comes to digital fundraising.
Yeah. So next, I want to really dive into your fundraising goal sheet from last time. So last week, we really talked about building out your major goals and your minor goals and factoring that into how you're planning to grow your fundraising this year. So I do want you to consider that spreadsheet in the context of what we're about to talk about, because it's really important that your fundraising goals are in line with your resources that you have available. So this also comes into play with reviewing your previous year. So we also walk through filling out that calendar template for your 2019 fundraising. So identify what are some of the gaps in resources. So let's say you didn't meet your fundraising goal for something that you ran last year, one of your fundraising initiatives. What happened that limited you to reaching that? Was it the people, the hours, the budget, the software, or was it, something with office politics, silos, or red tape that you're struggling with at your organization? So maybe classifying what some of those gaps were is going to really help you plan how to resolve those needs for your 2020 fundraising. And then also identifying what increases are needed this year. So if one of your fundraising initiatives, you want to grow that by 20% and raise 20% more, what specific items are you going to have to pull? So you might need to dedicate, 5 more hours at least to that project for the week. Or is it maybe a budgetary thing? Do you need to, if it's a bigger event, what increases are needed in the budget for that? So I think it's really important to reflect on last year in order to identify those gaps in resources and be able to effectively plan for your 2020 fundraising. And so once you are able to reflect and see what gaps you have, there's ways to advocate for more resources. So sometimes I feel like I talk to a lot of organizations, and to me, sometimes they feel kind of trapped because they want to do something new. They're looking for a new fundraising initiative, but they go, oh, my board would never approve that. So it breaks my heart because there's so many fundraisers that want to get up and accomplish new things, but they feel really limited by their resources that they have available. So I think it's really important to chat through how to advocate for more resources so that you really can complete your fundraising plan for 2020. So one of the things that I would recommend doing is taking a look at the return on investment. So we talked about that a lot last time. So how to calculate your ROI for your 2019 fundraising, and using that to inform which fundraising strategies you're going to dive into more this year and which ones you're going to further optimize. So I think one of the things that you want to do is approach your board with the return on investment. I think that helps your board really get a good understanding of what has performed really well and what you can continue to invest in. So I think having that data is really key to addressing them and getting them to approve maybe new resources. Another thing is, honestly, what you're already doing is going to be really key as well. So having this detailed fundraising plan to review in full what you're looking at and what your targets are, and projecting all of your fundraising for the year, that is going to go a long way in convincing your staff and board of the really resources that you need to accomplish your goals. So I think you're already in a good place just by being here. And then the next thing I would just say, have a really specific ask. So with a lot of resources, you know, you don't want to say, oh, we need more hours, for example, in order to accomplish this. You may have a specific ask to, you know, maybe we hire someone part-time, or, you know, see if a board member can kick in some more time. So having a really specific ask is going to be key in whether they say yes or no. So I just thought that this was a good example. So 2 months on our light plan is $170. So for example, an investment in $170 in CauseVox fundraising software will help us run a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. This is projected to help us raise twice as much as our email series directing donors to the donate button on our website, with a projected 3,000% return on investment. So having this sort of proposal written up, you may even want to add more details, but I think something like this that shows the return on investment, how much more you're expecting to bring in, what it's replacing, is going to be great to have a very specific ask that makes it easy for your board to assess what it is that you're looking for as far as resources go.
Yeah, that's a great example of a business case. You know, a lot of board members they hold professional jobs because, you know, they're board members. So depending on what kind of board you have, typically speaking, most boards we interact with are business folks. So what business folks respond to is, one, money, and then two, about ROI, especially top level executives. So the more you're able to present fundraising from a language that they understand, they speak to, and get spoken to every day, which is ROI, then the more successful you'll be to get approval, to get additional resources for your fundraising plan. So make sure you have a business case, treat it like a business, and then your board will respond to your compelling argument.
Absolutely. So as an action item for you, to really review all of your resources well, is to detail out your overall fundraising budget. So what you have to work with this year to accomplish your fundraising plans. Considering what software is at your disposal and what changes you might want to make, and making your list of solutions to obstacles that you're encountering with your fundraising goals, and making those proposals for budget increases as needed. So now that we've really chatted through how to comprehensively review all of your resources at your disposal, I think it's time to finalize your fundraising initiatives for 2020. So building out all of those fundraising initiatives that you're looking at for this year. So we're going to go from the SMART fundraising goals worksheet that hopefully you've filled out, or if you haven't yet, you will do soon, and translate that into your fundraising calendar for the year. So like Rob said earlier, your fundraising plan is a living document. So this isn't something that you just set up once and it, sits on your computer and you never look at again. It's really going to help you keep on track with your fundraising goals for this year. And also not just measure your fundraising success, but also learn how to adapt so that you are successful. So, let's say something in January, you launch a new fundraising initiative and you're either ahead of that goal or behind in that goal. Knowing that and having those insights at your disposal is going to help you actually optimize your fundraising later in the year, or help you give better insights into what you should lean more into. So when you're looking at all of your fundraising initiatives, and this is just a slide I drafted up with just some of the initiatives that I see a lot of organizations doing. You might even have some outside of this, but this is a good long list of things that you can consider when it comes to your fundraising initiatives for the year. And no matter what initiatives you're doing, there are some key performance indicators that you're going to want to refer back to really keep track of your fundraising success. So some of this we've actually already chatted about. So cost per dollar raised is a great indicator. It kind of ties into the return on investment. So keeping track of that as well as ROI is going to be essential. We talked about donor retention rate. So keeping track of the donors on a quarterly basis that you acquire rather, is going to be really important into tracking your fundraising growth throughout the year. And so no matter what you're doing, these are some great KPIs that you're going to want to refer back to and document as you complete each fundraising initiative. So you have a really quick and easy way to gain insights into how your fundraising is performing. So these are things that you not only want to set goals for, but you also want to continually keep track of on your fundraising calendar. So talking about ROI again, I just thought it would be good to do a refresh because we have chatted about that quite a bit today. So for your ROI, you're going to want to total up income generated, total up the cost of running each fundraising initiative, including staff time, any like postage, materials that you needed, event spaces. Software can be part of this as well. So really totaling up all of those costs and then having that income minus cost to really get a sense of what your net profit is. And then calculating that ROI is net profit divided by cost times 100. So just a good thing to refer back to as you are continually calculating ROI and using that for your budget as well. So one of the KPIs that I found really interesting is the cost per dollar raised. On average, it costs nonprofits about 24 cents to raise $1. So this is something that when you are tracking all of these KPIs throughout your fundraising, this is just a good metric for you. So you know if you are above this or under this. If you're under this, you probably want to take another look at that and see either if you can optimize it or cut it out of your fundraising plan. So that's about a 316% return on investment. So that's the average.
And when Candace mentions if you're under this, I think that's referring to the ROI percentage specifically. Mm-hmm. So if your ROI percentage is below this benchmark of 316, then there's ways that you can do to look at it to improve your ROI by increasing return or reducing costs. But if your average cost is less than 24 cents, then we need to learn from you on how we can do that a little better.
Yeah, you're doing good. So It's just a good benchmark so that you know what the average is and if you are performing above or under this. This is also a look at some of the return on investment broken down by different fundraising methods. So when you're considering your fundraising, the lower the cost to raise a dollar or $100 in this case, and a low fundraising ratio, these things are going to factor into, that return on investment. So like with direct mail, it actually ends up sometimes costing on average $138 to raise $100. So you're losing out on that method.
You're basically losing money when you're losing $38.
And this is just the average. It might not be the case at your organization, but this is just a great thing for you to refer back to see if you're, again, at this rate and what your return on investments really are. Benefits and events, it often costs about $50 to raise $100. So you're spending a lot on just the event itself. So it makes it really hard to actually bring in a lot of funds.
And these are, I believe these figures are also, they exclude personnel costs. So for example, when you do a benefit or event, you have a few folks running around like crazy for about a month and a half trying to make the event happen. It excludes all the staff and personnel costs in this. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah. And so falling in at about that 24 cents per dollar raise, there's direct mail renewal. So re-engaging people who have already given by direct mail, as well as planned giving. So those major donors that you're working with costs about, in time and even just everything that you're doing to secure those major donors, you're typically investing about $25 per $100 raised with planned giving as well. Grants, there's a little bit higher of an ROI. You're spending about $20 to raise $100 with every grant that you acquire. But with grants, they can be super time consuming and can offer some constraints as well as far as your staff time goes. And then with digital fundraising, it's from what we've seen here at CauseVox, it's typically $3 per $100 raised. So that's actually a 3,200% return on investment. So you're actually able to grow your fundraising with a lot less costs with a lot of digital fundraising methods. So also something to consider as you build out your fundraising and want to increase your return on investment. So now that we've chatted through some of these fundraising activities that you're going to be filling out in your calendar, there's a few suggested fundraising strategies that help you grow your fundraising with a good return on investment. So just wanted to dive into those so that you can work these into your plans. The number one thing that I wanted to drive home is recurring giving. That typically has a 5 times higher return on investment than one-time donors. So acquiring a new recurring donor is going to be 5 times more worth it than just one-time donors. And then recurring donors have a 90% retention rate as opposed to 46%. So you're basically doubling retention rate off the bat with your recurring donors. And so that ties into, a lot of the staff time as well that you spend nurturing these donors. So you're going to get more bang for your buck when it comes to recurring donors. And also just an interesting insight is that revenue increased 17% in 2018 from recurring giving. So that's a really big jump. So that actually speaks to how donors are even preferring to give. So with all of these insights, recurring giving should definitely be on your list as you're factoring in your fundraising for 2020. Another great fundraising initiative that helps you increase your return on investment is peer-to-peer fundraising. So not only does this help you acquire a whole new set of donors, it actually helps you raise twice as much as compared with other digital fundraisers. So that return on investment is only increasing with peer-to-peer. So digital fundraising in general, going back to that $3 spent per $100 raised, you're going to get even more out of peer-to-peer fundraising. So you're going to typically raise about twice as much. And so actually for anyone that isn't familiar with peer-to-peer, peer-to-peer is where you engage your audience to set up personal fundraising pages so that they can fundraise on your behalf. And yeah, it's one of my favorite fundraising strategies.
Yeah, and what it looks like is this little screenshot on the bottom right where you have someone named Aviva, and she's a supporter. She knows about this organization, Faith in Action. And as part of the campaign, she went into the campaign site, created a personal page, told a personal story, and then sent it out to her friends and family to drive donations. This is really valuable because instead of just relying on your own list, your own reach as an organization, you can actually borrow your volunteers, your board members, and their personal lists, like their audience. So this way you reach more people, you get more awareness, and you get more donations, which on average is around 2x. So that's a great fundraising tactic to add in.
Yeah, so definitely consider adding that into your 2020 fundraising plans. The next one would just be to optimize your donation page. So many donation pages are still so clunky, and it's now 2020. We like to give easily and with really secure, optimized pages on any device. So making sure that your page is mobile optimized, offering mobile payments, fewer form fields, just having a real seamless giving experience is going to really improve your conversion rates. So this was another key performance indicator that I referenced earlier. So you're going to want to track conversion rates on your donation page. And then as you make improvements, track how that conversion rate is improving. One of the things that you can do, and also this is just on your website, it's up and going all the time. It's a really easy switch to make and with a real high value. So with little effort, you can have a really nice donation page that converts a lot more donors. And, you know, just for example, the Irish International Immigrant Center, they used us. They had just a generic PayPal button before. And then when they switched to CauseVox, they ended up raising, I think it was 81% more off the bat. And then it increased to about twice as more with just a real streamlined donation page on their website.
Yeah, and if you recall, one of our first slides was the digital fundraising cycle where there's like a little loop. And the first step being attract, then nurture, then convert. So this is important to when you optimize your donation form or donation page, because then you're caring about the whole donor journey. Like when you're attracting them, how you're nurturing them and telling stories, as well as when it's time to make a donation, you make it really easy for them to do it. So optimize your donation form will pay outsized dividends than anything else that you do. If you make it easy for your donors, seamless, and with the best practices in mind, then you'll easily convert more donors, and your efforts before that would pay off with a higher ROI. Mm-hmm. So look into making sure that your donation page and form is top-notch.
Yeah. This can also increase gift size, also based on suggested giving levels with your donation form as well.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you have a fundraising goal on your fundraising plan where it's just about, you know, increasing online gifts by like a low percentage, like 5-10%. When you just swap out your donation form, if you add in donation tipping, for example, which allows donors to cover your fees, or an easy way for donors to make recurring donation, then those like simple minor tweaks will help you get single to low double-digit increases on average on your fundraising goals. So something super simple.
Yeah. Similarly, so email fundraising, I'm sure you have all done it. It's been around for quite a while, but it still continues to be something that does drive donations. So typically email fundraising has a 1,700 to 3,600% return on investment. So you're going to get a higher ROI on email fundraising than, let's say, social media. So promoting to your newsletter list and current donors, really getting it out there when you are fundraising and making that ask in your emails is going to be really important. So just maybe considering how specifically you can boost your email fundraising for this year is going to be a great method to help drive more donations. 13% of all digital fundraising is driven by email alone. And I have a feeling it's actually more than this, but this is what I've seen work really well for a lot of our customers as well, promoting with email. And lastly, we talked about this a lot last week about tracking donor retention. Now, this is something that I would highly recommend diving more into this year. This looks less like one specific method than it does a whole bunch of other smaller ways to retain your donors. So donors that are retained, have a 2 to 3 times higher return on investment than acquiring a new donor. Repeat donors have a 60% retention rate as opposed to a 23% retention rate for one-time donors. And donors that give a second gift within 90 days of their first gift actually have a lifetime value that increases 5%. So whatever you can be doing to retain your donors is going to be really essential. So I donated to this organization called Know Me Network earlier in 2019, and they sent me a really nice email at the end of the year just reporting some of the impact that they've had this year and thanking me for my gift. It was just a really nice little touch and a way to keep me updated on the impact that they're making. So I'm more likely to give again in the future. So something even simple, some simple fundraising initiatives that look to drive retention have a really big impact. So something to consider as you're factoring your 2020 fundraising initiatives. So now that we've talked through some suggested strategies, and here's even more for you to think through, and as you're thinking through all of your fundraising strategies, now it's going to be time to actually list all of your strategies out for the year. So you're going to create your fundraising activities list. It's pretty straightforward. So when you're creating this list, you're going to want to name your activity, whether it's an email fundraising campaign or if it's direct mail, whatever it is. Try your best to name each activity, prioritizing the activities that, of course, are going to have the best return on investment, and considering what audience you're targeting. So maybe you're doing just a campaign to major donors, looking to get a larger gift. Maybe you're just trying to acquire new donors or maybe drive donor retention. So these audience options are going to be pretty different based on your fundraising initiatives. So very rarely is it just everyone. Although, of course, there's some annual fundraisers that do pretty much target everyone. Dates, if possible. So just having a date range is a really good idea. So whether actually start that fundraising initiative on that specific is good for you to just leave that in there in your plans so you can aim for that. And then as you're fundraising throughout the year, since this is a living document, you can, of course, make those changes as needed. Estimated expenses. So we talked through this earlier about estimating expenses of each fundraising initiative and having that tie into your budget. Also your income goal. So this comes a lot from the goals that you set last week, but really tying each income goal specifically to the goals that you set previously is going to be really essential. And any additional notes for each initiative. So you might want to list some added benefits. You might want to list some key performance indicators that you're going to be tracking for that event or fundraising activity. And any software that you're going to be using. So these are great. Just keeping any additional notes there is going to be essential. So here's just one example of a fundraising activity list. So this is just one fundraising activity that is detailed out pretty carefully with what the fundraiser is, what the audience is, when, expenses, goal, and additional notes on how they're going to actually run it. So you're going to do this for each and every one of your fundraising activities. So an action item for you is based on the activities with the highest return on investment in 2019. Begin building out your 2020 fundraising plan. And when you're building out your plan, just consider how you're going to prioritize your fundraising activities for the year. Maybe listing them in order of priority, just so that you're clear about what's most important and what resources should be devoted to first, and how you can divide your resources above the lower end of your priority list, and then which things can maybe be cut out. All right, so let's get into filling out your fundraising plan calendar for 2020. So now that we've chatted through all of your resources that you're looking at, how to estimate your total costs, really going through each fundraising activity that you're doing, we're going to compile your fundraising calendar so that you have everything all totaled up here and have it marked which goals that you're aligning each fundraising initiative with as well. So this is going to be a great tool for you throughout the year. So first up, with all of those activities that you list out, you're just going to want to plug those in by date, sorted by date into your fundraising calendar, grouped by months, and segmented into Q1 through Q4. So assigning which months these fundraising activities belong in makes it really quick and easy to see what's coming up next. Next, you're going to want to total all your costs, resources, and income. So first, add up all those costs for each fundraising initiative. Hopefully, by the time you're plugging it into the calendar, you've already done that. So you just plug it in with the materials, event spaces, food, postage, fees, etc. Any staff time that you estimate is going to be devoted. And then this should all be in line with those resources that you already detailed out. So let's say the staff time doesn't add up for January, you're going to want to take another look at what fundraising initiatives are really possible for you. Next up, you're going to want to estimate, your staff time, estimate the income from each fundraising initiative, estimate that cost total. So then you have an idea of net income and return on investment. And then as you're fundraising, so to plan, you're going to want to total that estimate income per quarter. But as you're fundraising, you should be updating this with the real insights. So what you actually raised, what your actual costs were, and your actual totals per quarter. So then by the end of the year, you have everything already set up for the following year.
And then what you can do is when you have your budget to actual or your estimate to actual, then the money that you save in terms of resources, in terms of budget, or let's say you're exceeding your fundraising goals, then that can carry over to future fundraising initiatives in the year. Or let's say your fundraising but then you're a little bit short of the expected, then what you can do is treat your fundraising plan like a living document and then adjust future fundraising goals upwards or downwards based on what you learn from what you're doing earlier on in the year.
Yeah. And with all of that, I think that's great to just have right on your document itself is what the results, if you did run this fundraising activity last year, what were the results? So trying to track any key performance indicators or any significant real insights that you had from last year, just so that they're handy so you know how you're performing this year versus last year, and helps you basically just continually evaluate your growth and make sure that you're always growing, basically. So that's a good thing to plug into your calendar as well. Next, there's goal alignment. So with all of your SMART fundraising goals, so you have those micro goals. A lot of those were around donor acquisition, donor retention, and gift size growth. These are basically the 3 ways that you can grow your fundraising. Each activity should align with one of these, if not more than one of these goals that you've detailed out in your SMART fundraising goals worksheet. So just try and plug in which goals they're aligning. So if you want to do it by numbers, that's great. Or you could just write donor acquisition as part of one of the goals as well. So just try your best to map your fundraising activities to your goals as much as possible to make sure that you're actually investing the most in the things that will help you reach your goals.
This is a really great tool for you to not only manage your team, but also manage your board. A lot of times boards, organizations get distracted and they lose focus essentially on executing the fundraising plan. So when they hear about something that's nice and shiny, they drop their plans and chase after whatever's fleeting at the moment. So with this fundraising plan, what you're doing is aligning specific activities that you want to do as an organization with the goals that were set. So this way, when something does come around that does not align with the goals, does not align with the activities, it's your perfect defense to help you manage your board members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not get distracted.
Yep.
And drawn off your fundraising course. Lastly, just keeping track of other resources and notes. Mentioned this a little bit earlier, but just a few things that you want to make note of with each of your fundraising activities is maybe the fundraising software that you'll be using, the marketing software that you're using to promote each fundraising initiative and draw in those new donors or market to existing donors, which key performance indicators you're tracking. And this is updated as you go with the actual performance that you had with each initiative. Ideas for implementation, just anything that you can think of about some strategies that you want to do to implement the fundraising activity well. Just any tasks you can think of off the bat that need to get done or any remaining roadblocks. So let's say you do know that this fundraising activity is going to take more hours than you have, just maybe noting that roadblock so you can kind of tackle that and be aware of any issues that may come about ahead of time, and it gives you more preparation as you go into each fundraising activity. And also anything else you can think of. So if you have more notes, add in all the notes you want. So then at this point, you should be able to fill out your 2020 fundraising calendar to prepare you for the whole year, and also to help you stay on track all year and continue to check back in with your fundraising plans and make sure that you're meeting and exceeding your goals and adapting your strategies as needed. So this document can really do a lot to help you and your board and your team just stay focused and stay on track And so this is something that, you can take away. We'll review that during your one-on-one session as well. Something else that you're taking away is your fundraising goals worksheet. Just chatted through this. So this is all of your focus areas and your overall targets for the year, also highlighting any obstacles that you might face as you try and reach them. So your action item is to complete your fundraising calendar and share and review your fundraising calendar and your SMART goals worksheet with your team. Yeah, so that's really where that leaves us for today.
Yeah, so the output of all this should be your fundraising calendar and fundraising plan. Now we walked through kind of each step. Today, what we really talked about was how you can gather your resources, you can finalize some of your fundraising strategies, and then you can input these two last remaining components into your fundraising plan. Now, once you have that inputted, the next thing is to socialize it with your board or get any your approvals and to commit this into action for your organization. Well, that's pretty much class number 2 in terms of creating a fundraising plan. Now, just as a reminder, there is a one-on-one individually scheduled session. So look out for an email from Candace at cosvox.com to schedule your one-on-one fundraising plan session to review what you have. If you don't receive this email, of course, feel free to email us support@cosvox.com or candace@cosvox.com. If you don't receive this in the next few days, then please feel free to reach out. Again, we are Cosvox. We are a digital fundraising platform for nonprofits. So if it fits into your fundraising plan for 2020, some digital fundraising that you want to do, digital fundraising you want to try, or digital fundraising that you want to optimize, we'd be happy to talk about our fundraising software and how we can help you with that. We make it easy, we make it high converting, and we make it seamless for you to raise more funds with less effort. One of the big things that we offer are donation forms. So if you have a clunky donate button on your website, such as a PayPal button or something that takes a lot of steps, that's not easy. That's not as easy as you shopping on Amazon.com or any other e-commerce site, then look into Cosvox. We'll be happy to give you a demo in terms of how it works. We also do offer peer-to-peer. So this is a way for you to acquire new donors that we talked about. So great way is to run something that's peer-to-peer focused, and our platform can handle from start to finish your peer-to-peer fundraising. And then very lastly, we also do crowdfunding too. So if you have a specific project or program that you want to fund, that's a little bit different than a donation form that has a specific goal, then you can also launch those on Cosvox in less time and less effort. Great. So in a nutshell, you can raise more with less with Cosvox, and we're happy to help you with your digital fundraising and increasing your results this year. Our customers do raise more on Cosvox, so we have thousands of customers, small and medium-sized organizations that use us. Well, if you want more info about Cosvox, feel free to go to cosvox.com. I think at this time, we just want, I know we're a little bit over time, but if there are questions, then we're happy to put that in. So as you all are putting in your questions, the last thing that we want to share is something really exciting. So every year for about 2 weeks, we do a thing called our annual sale. It only happens once a year. And we're offering 20% off our annual plans. So the annual light plan, as well as the annual standard plan. And if you're a larger organization, we do have higher tier plans as well. But these are our 2 most popular plans for the average organization. You can get 20% off if you sign up before January 31st. This will be included in the slides as well, so feel free to take a look. Let's jump to questions then.
Yeah. We had a few great questions come in so far. Anyone else that's with us, feel free to, continue messaging in your questions, and we'll try and get to as many as possible. So Philip messaged us earlier today when we first started, and he said, how does the strategy differ for creating your 2020 fundraising plan if it is your first attempt for a startup nonprofit organization? So I think this is a really good question because a lot of what we talked about was kind of basing your goals off of what you've raised previously. I would start out by getting your goals in order. So kind of, you can sort of skip that review phase and go right to the SMART goals worksheet and just talk about what it is that you're looking to accomplish. So a lot of what is going to be different, where we talked a little bit about donor retention. You might be more on the acquisition side. And so leaning more into fundraising strategies that are going to drive donor acquisition is going to be one way that your goals look a little bit different. And then based on those acquisition goals, you can still really detail out a lot of highly effective methods. And a lot of that is going to look into what has been really effective at other nonprofits. So going back to some of those suggested fundraising activities from earlier that have high return on investments, and kind of implementing those as much as possible. And then throughout the year, you're just going to want to be even more careful to track your growth quarter over quarter. So then that gives you ideas on how you can continue to iterate on what you're currently doing. So that's just one of the questions.
Yeah, we have another question about how do you define standard versus large donations? So this is a great question because there's actually no standardized way to do it. So it's up to your organization to figure out, what is a large donation, what is a small donation. Let's say you're like if you're a big nonprofit, a large donation, $10,000 and up per donation. Well, a small donation is something that is anywhere under that amount. For most small and medium-sized organizations, a large gift is $1,000 or more, and a small gift is $1,000 or less. So it's really up to you and your organization how you want to slice it based on your donors and donor history.
Yeah, and so I think Elise, who has joined us from last time as well, from Sharp Dressed Man, asked about peer-to-peer fundraising. So I'll continue to chat with you. So let's get a time on the calendar. And this goes for anyone. If you're interested in hearing more about how you can implement peer-to-peer at your nonprofit, we can always talk about that in our one-on-one scheduled session, if that's something you're interested in hearing more about. Or if you just want a demo as well of what that would look like to run peer-to-peer on CauseVox, we can schedule that separately. So yeah, anyone that's interested in learning more about peer-to-peer, feel free to just shoot me an email either at support@causevox.com or candace@causevox.com. And we can definitely chat more about what that will look like for your organization.
Cool. So I think that's about time. So thanks so much for the time today for class number 2. Look out for the recording of this video very soon, as well as the email summary to book your one-on-one time for your fundraising plan. Once again, thanks so much for joining us in our course, and we look forward to seeing you all meet and reach and exceed your fundraising goals for 2020. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.